Hello and welcome back to Wrongmar. In today's English lesson, we're finally getting a start on our first draft of our narrative fiction stories. Our walt for today is to write our first draft of our fiction narratives. Over the last few weeks, we've been slowly planning and building up an idea of what our story was going to be. By now, you should have planned out your characters, your setting, and your problem and solution for your story. For my story, I've decided on the title Mystery on Mars, and I have my character of Alex and Freddy. I also have my setting really clear in my head, and I know what the problem and solution is going to be. Your first draft is where your idea starts to come together for the first time. It's your first attempt at writing your story, so expect it to be messy. Your first draft is not supposed to look finished or clean or complete, really. There's going to be scribbles and crosses and arrows and X's and all sorts of things on your draft by the time you're finished it. The most important thing about a first draft is not spelling, is not grammar. All that's important is getting your idea down on paper. But before you do that, there's one thing I want you to do. I want you to pause the video and find something or someone to tell your story to. The reason this is helpful is when we actually say out loud what our story is going to be about, we start to add a lot more detail than if we were to just go straight to paper and try to write it down. So if there is a human around you, pause the video and grab them. If there's no human around you, if there is a pet, like an animal, a cat, a dog, a goldfish, go over to them and pause the video and tell them what you're going to write about. And if there's no humans, no pets, grab the nearest inanimate object, like a teddy bear, a pillow, or even just your hand, and explain to them what your story is all about. Pause the video and go share with somebody what you're going to write about. Okay, depending on who you are talking to, you probably have a better idea now of what your story is going to be about. Maybe if you were talking to a person, they might have asked some questions about your story that helped you with your ideas. We're going to start to write our first draft now. And when we're thinking of a first draft of a narrative story, it's useful to try and break the story up into 5 separate parts. Part 1 is the setting. This happens at the beginning of the story and it tells us where the story is taking place and who the main characters are. The second part is the first event. This is where we start to see our characters getting into a bit of a problem or getting involved in a situation that's going to be important soon. Part 3 is the main problem in your story. By now you should have a good idea of what that is from your planning in the last lesson. This is where all the action and drama takes part in this part of the story. Part 4 is the solution. This is where you either solve or don't solve the big problem that happens in your story. And the final part is the ending. This is where you close the story with a happily ever after, or maybe not so happily ever after. I'm going to model how to use your planning sheets to help you with these 5 different sections of your story. Let's start off with the setting for my story. So, for my setting, I'm going to use the character planning sheet and also the setting planning sheet to help me write this part of the story. This is what I've come up with so far. Alex lived on the planet Mars with the rest of his family. His father worked in the gas fields up north, so his mom took care of the family. They lived in a big Mars Dome house. It looked like a big bubble. There were lots of Mars Dome buildings all around where Alex lived. Humans had first come to Mars 50 years ago, so a lot had changed. Alex worked in the rock mines with his twin brother Freddy. They did everything together. Okay, so that's my first draft of the setting, and there's a lot of stuff in there that I could improve later on when I get a chance to go back over it. But for now, I think that generally sets the story up quite well, and I've introduced my characters that I built earlier on in the week. And I think, yeah, the setting of Mars, I think with the domes, it has some pieces from my planning sheet that I wanted to put in there. So I'm happy enough with that for my setting. Let's move on to part 2 of the story. Part 2 is the initiating event, the thing that pulls our characters into a bit of trouble. So for this one, I'm going to use my story mountain, because I already actually did this. I already know what I want to write about here on my planning sheet. So here's what I came up with. One morning, Alex woke up late. He looked at his alarm. He was late for work. He ran downstairs to the kitchen. His mom was cooking eggs. Freddy was not there. He must have already left for work. Alex grabbed some toast and ran out the door. When he got to the mine, he was already 2 hours late. His boss was very angry with him. His boss asked Alex why Freddy was late too. Alex asked the boss where Freddy was, but the boss said he hadn't turned up to work yet. So you can see in this part of the story, get a clue that maybe something bad is about to happen or a problem is about to arise, but we don't know what it is yet. Let's go on to part 3 and see how I wrote that. So part 3 is the main problem, the big drama of the story. I used the top of my story mountain to help me write this part, because I've already planned it out. Here's what I wrote. Alex was worried where Fred had gone. Alex's Mars phone beeped. It was a message from Freddy. He was in trouble. The message said, "Come to the old ruins, quick." Alex grabbed a pickaxe and ran as fast as he could to the old ruins. When he got there, he could not believe what he saw. On the ground in the middle of the old ruins was a door. Freddy jumped into it. When he landed, he looked around. He was in some sort of alien village. He saw Freddy. He was locked in a jail cell. So see, this is a very dramatic part of the story where everybody who's reading is going, oh my god, what's going to happen next? That's what you want in the problem part, the peak of your mountain. Let's take a look at part 4, the solution. And again, I'm going to use the story mounting planning sheet that I did before to help me write this section. So I know that I want to write something about Alex meeting the aliens. So this is what I came up with. Alex ran over to him to help, but he was locked in. You need to go see the mayor. He has the key, said Freddy. So Alex went to find the mayor. He found him in one of the buildings. If you want to save your brother, you're gonna have to do something for me, said the mayor. You have to bring us your most precious human treasure. You call it peanut butter. Alex thought this was really weird. It turns out the aliens love peanut butter. So Alex ran home and got some. Now for our final part of the story, the ending. Again, I'm going to use my story mountain because I know that I want to have a happy ending where they get to go home. So this is what I wrote for my first draft of that part. Alex gave the alien all the peanut butter from his Mars dome. The alien was so happy that he ate it straight away. He threw the key to Alex and went back to eating more peanut butter. Alex ran to the jail and freed Freddy. Let's get out of here quickly, said Freddy. They ran back through the door and decided to push a big rock over it so nobody would ever fall down there again. We better get to work, said Alex. So the two of them ran to work as quickly as they could. And that's my first draft. Now, is there spelling mistakes? Absolutely. Is there grammar mistakes? Yes, plenty of them. And is the story, perfect? No, I could definitely improve it, and I will improve it. There's parts that I'm not quite happy with, and I want to change up. But for a first draft, I now know the story from start to beginning. And that is all you need for a first draft. So don't worry about spellings, grammar, or any little details you're going to add in later. Your story will change when you go on to your second draft. That's totally normal. So what are you waiting for? Get your pencil, your paper, and your planning sheets out, and off you go to write your first draft. That's all we have time for today. Until next time, take care.